built from scratch. On this show, I interview entrepreneurs under 30 to hear about the stories of their initial success. My goal is to encourage the next generation of leaders to take action and make a difference. I'm Eric Levine. On today's episode, we have entrepreneur Maddie Thompson with Mad Social Agency. Originally from Manitoba, Canada, Maddie's entrepreneurial journey began at 13, landing a fashion internship with Triple Flip after pitching her design to over 150 businesses. By high school, she co-founded Social Clothing, transforming a class project celebrating Canadian traditions into a full-time passion. In 2020, Maddie launched Mad Social Agency as a side hustle, quickly scaling it into a thriving full-service marketing agency. Today, Maddie leads a 30-person team, boasts a LinkedIn following of 18,000, has completed over 400 projects across 3 countries, and holds a spot on Canada's 30 under 30. Maddie is just 23 years old. Maddie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
We're going to have some fun with it. And Maddie, how I start every episode is I like to flash back to the beginning. Obviously, we see the success with what you're doing today, but there is a long journey for where you originally came from. So you're from Canada, which is pretty unique. You're the, I think maybe 3rd international podcast guest that's coming on. So I'd love to know, like, what was growing up in Manitoba like?
Yeah, so I'm from a small town outside of Winnipeg, actually. So small
Winnipeg,
town,
okay.
4,000 people. And it's kind of weird because everybody knows everybody, right? So, and the dream as a kid and growing up there is to go to what, like, the quote unquote big city, which if you're familiar with Winnipeg, Winnipeg is not very large at all. And people in Winnipeg want to go to Toronto or want to go to the States and stuff like that. So my childhood was interesting. It's a very Mennonite town. It's a very traditional town. You know, you get married young, you go to university after you graduate high school, you go get a nice job and have a nice family. And I never was interested in that kind of lifestyle or anything like that. So that's kind of the gist of what growing up was
Wow.
like.
So did you see when you were younger, did you see initial sparks of like entrepreneurship in this? So you're already thinking differently. You have this different mindset. And as an entrepreneur, you have to have the different mindset. At 13, you have a cool story that happens, but did you
Yeah.
see, or even before that, did you see initial sparks of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I was constantly creating things and trying to make something. I didn't even like think of it that way as, oh, I want to own a business one day. That never came to my mind. But there's American Girl dolls. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Of course. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so when I was young, I always had American Girl dolls, and we're talking when I was like 10 years old. And I was like, oh, I want to make Canada Girl dolls. And so I'd be like sewing clothes and I would be selling these like doll clothes online. I mean, every kid has a lemonade stand story, but I would do lemonade stands
Beautiful.
and have it for charity, but I would go crazy with the marketing where I'd get my mom to post in the Facebook groups like crazy. I'd get my brother in this big blow up chicken to go and dance on the side of the road, and we would do kind of more
Really?
intense things.
Wow.
Yeah. I've always loved building things, and I've always 10x'd everything I've done. So, great example, in grade 11, we had a project in math for scale to calculate scale. And so we had to take like a soccer ball and measure it down and recreate it in a smaller form to showcase the scale. I decided to do my entire house. I measured it all and I rebuilt it out of cardboard on a smaller scale. So that's where my background's in architecture. But yeah, I've always just loved building things, not necessarily that I was like, oh, I want to be a business owner when I'm older, but I just love building and creating.
Curious, was it out of competitiveness? Do you think that spark?
So I'm ultra competitive. I've played every single sport possible. I got kicked out of basketball in grade 10 because I punched a girl. Like I'm crazy. And
So a lot of this, like they're doing
yeah,
like a small project, and for you, it's let's amp this up to the next level and just show
yes.
everybody how much better that I can be.
Yeah, I like to
Wow.
be the best. And I also think a part of it, of why I like to show off in that way, is because I was a heavy introvert. I was a kid where like I would go play football with the guys at lunch, but I had no friends aside from that. And I would go hang out with the teacher.
Wow.
That was me. I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't even go up and like order a coffee or anything. And so I think that at a young age when I started my YouTube and when I do all these projects and go kind of 10x, it was my way of getting that attention that I craved without actually having to talk to people and kind of be in these friend groups, right? It
Ooh.
was a way for me to be seen without needing to put myself out there in that other type of social way.
I'm gonna try my best to come back to that. There's a really key point here, but I think there's a good spot at the end of our time that I think we could really bring that back up. I'm
Mhm.
curious with this initial business and some of the things that you were just creative, innovator, entrepreneur, like maybe you weren't creating these massive companies at this point, but you were starting. Did you have support from your maybe siblings or parents or close relatives on this? Were they like, Maddie, go after it, keep hustling? Or was it something where you were really against the grain?
Yeah, like when it comes to kind of triple flip and social clothing, they were more smaller projects. I mean, everybody was super supportive around me. And same with Mad, like Mad Social. Back then it was called Spark, but I didn't even really try to start a business. It just kind of happened. And so everybody around me was always supportive. I was definitely against the grain. The only time there was maybe a bit of pushback was when I was in architecture school dropping out to run the business full time. Little bit of pushback there, just because then you're losing that security. It's even more against the grain than the normal person. But no, nothing overly intense. Like
Were
everyone
your
was,
parents, were the people in your life, do you have any entrepreneurs around you?
no, none.
So when I mean, when you don't come from a family of entrepreneurs and they see you taking this big risk and they're like, okay, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute. And so you go
Hmm.
through that, obviously, and that might have been, I don't know the full extent of the story, but
Yeah.
if you have people around you that don't see it, and now you're like taking this big, bold risk, which is great because you're
Hmm.
pushing yourself, you're having to jump out of your mindset, but people like they're confused. They're like, it doesn't seem like a smart
Yeah.
decision, right? That's crazy.
Yeah, like I think I've just always been an adrenaline seeker and a
Yeah.
risk taker. Like I played rugby in high school and I would go, I mean, usually if you've ever watched women's rugby, they're
I've
like
never
200
done that. No.
pound, they're like 200-pound girls. Like
Yeah.
usually they're like bulky women. And I was this skinny little thing on wing running toward these massive girls, like tackling them down. So I think I've always been viewed as odd. So it wasn't seen as weird as like, oh, Maddie likes the adrenaline and the risk because I was always just 10x everything.
Isn't that the perfect recipe for an entrepreneur though? You have to be
Yeah.
weird, have to be odd. So
Yeah.
going into kind of the next phase, you at 13 years old, you go to that opportunity with was triple flip, I believe is what
Yeah.
it was called.
Yeah.
And I mean, reaching out to all those 150 businesses to try and figure this out, like what inspired, like how did you even know? Because basically that's initial cold outreach and you're 13
Yeah.
years old. How did you figure out how to do that?
Yeah. 10 years ago, I was on Instagram. Gary V posted a video about how crazy social media was. Like, this is kind of when it was still blowing up, still early days. He's like, you guys don't realize the power your phone has on these platforms. You can reach out, and now we take it for granted. You can reach out to anybody you want in the world, any celebrity, any business, just at the tip of your fingers. You just have to message them and you never know who's going to respond. And so it was that video that I watched when I was 13 and I really wanted to be a fashion designer. Again, love making things, love all things creative. And for some reason, I took that super literally and I was like, oh, I've drawn up all these fashion designs. Why don't I message these companies and like see if they want me to do something for them? Because there was this other, I forget her name. It was Isabella something, and she was a 13-year-old designing clothes as well, and I wanted to be her. And so I kind of just took that step, and I was like, why not?
So you
Yeah.
you reach out to them and then did you expect like in your mind you're like, oh, I'm gonna get a response backwards, like, you know what, I'm gonna throw it out there. I mean, whatever, I'm just having a good time doing this and whatever happens happens, and then it progressed into something a lot bigger.
Yeah, it was more of the latter where I just kind of did it and I wasn't really expecting anything. It was just more of a fun, yeah,
That's
fun thing.
crazy. So what did that amount to? It came, you ended up at 13 years old, you had the chance to design for, is that a Canadian company? I don't know if I've heard of Triple Flip before.
Yeah, Canadian company. They do activewear for like tween girls.
Okay.
They're not around anymore, but yeah, like I even got responses from Lululemon and stuff too.
That's insane.
Like, yeah.
Did you realize at the time the significance of that? Like you're 13 years old and you're like, holy crap, these companies are responding to me. Like, did that compute? Like, because now you can look back and say that is pretty crazy for a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
But in the moment, were you fully, in a way, present, like
No, not
observing
at
it?
all.
No.
No, I just it
Wow.
was just a fun thing for me. Like I went to Calgary to their headquarters to see samples and stuff like that. Like I was meeting the CEO of this massive company in person at a Winnipeg photo shoot. And yeah, I don't think it computed at all. But I think that's one, I wouldn't call myself successful by any means, but one reason as to why I've been semi-successful and been able to do what I can do is because I've been so oblivious for so long. And I just always saw the positive in everything. And I didn't really
Mm,
realize these opportunities that I was getting, how complex and unique and cool they actually were. And I just kind of took it as, oh, like, great, that's cool. And I just like did the thing. And I didn't overanalyze it or overthink it. And even to this day, I think as I get older, I feel like I know less. Where when I was young and started the company, it was just kind of like, yeah, this is fun. And I didn't think about the how complex the business world is or how complex
mm.
anything else is.
It's almost like not, it's it in a sense, the naivete that you have when
Mm,
because you're 13 years old to reach out to a company like that. Like now, like say you're maybe in your 30s, you're like, I'm just gonna try this thing. Like you would probably feel way less, or the average person is going to be way
mhm.
less encouraged to do that rather than
Yeah.
the optimistic 13-year-old that says, I'm just going to do this because it's fun and like I'm going to get an opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, even though that's just extremely, the chances that that happens are extremely unlikely, which is
Yeah.
crazy. So,
Yeah.
Maddie, you're at 13, you have this opportunity, and I think what it shows at the beginning of your entrepreneurial career is how important just putting yourself out there in the cold outreach, almost just, you don't know, you're throwing up chances, but you're taking key term, taking action. And now fast forward a little bit to 2018.
Hmm.
In high school, you launch the company Social Clothing
Yeah.
out of an entrepreneurial class that you had, and you had 7 classmates that it looked like that started this with you. So tell me, what did that company exactly do?
Yeah, so it was Visions and Ventures. We had to make a just a like business plan and make a quote unquote business. We were split into two groups. One group just did some sort of like they sold candy at lunch. And this was right after Triple Flip kind of went bankrupt. And it was like, I want to do clothing. So we started a clothing. I initially took lead on things. Like I'm very much so a leader. Every project I've done in university, everything, I just naturally kind of take the lead. And so we did this project. It kind of blew up. Like we used social media because we had no money to start it, right? So we used social media, we printed posters, put them around school, and it actually started to gain some traction, especially because anyone familiar with Manitoba, Manitoba is very unique for their socials. So we have what's called wedding socials, which is when people raise money for their weddings.
Hmm.
And so it was this kind of thing that paid homage to people in Manitoba, and Manitobans found that so cool. And so they wanted this hoodie that reflected their Manitoban heritage. And so it kind of blew up. And the other people part of the team, I guess, they only saw it as a school project, right? They just wanted the grades. I was like, okay, now we've like kind of built a company and I want to keep it going. So kept it going. I bought them all out for $20 each.
Oh my God.
and
Yeah,
and
great.
like the company never equated to anything insane, right? But it was big enough to the point where I carried it on like after I graduated high school and into university. Like I don't like we made still a decent amount of money.
Hmm.
And it was just this fun, yeah, this fun venture.
So when you say you bought them out for $20, was there like an initial contract going in, like we are the 7 owners, and then you just got to the point? Was it like a formality or was it more of like a joke? Because
Yeah.
$20.
It was like so you had to make a formal business plan. You had to
Okay.
have shares in the company. So we all had like our
Okay. Got it.
shares
Yep.
and then we could sell shares to get money into the company that we could spend on things. So like I think we got $60 from like selling shares from parents and stuff like that, which is what we bought our
Great. Yeah.
samples with. And so those shares were the equivalent of $20 each.
And
That's
so you
what
bought
we
it out, and then yeah, then you
they're
take it over.
happy. They're like, well, fuck, I'm making $20 off of a school project. Like they don't care.
Right. That's crazy. So one of the notes I wrote down in working with a lot of people can be frustrating if they're not don't have the vision you have. And I didn't know that detail of it. They thought it was more just a class project. You were like, let's be real about this. That's like the first, from what I gather, because you have like this individual contributor role for your when you're hustling at 13, and now this is like kind of the foundation of a business structure. I saw you were like HR, you had a finance guy, and like kind of like
Yeah,
putting some of the
yeah.
stuff together, right? So what was it like? What did you learn working with other people like at the very beginning? What were some of those early lessons on like collaboration for a company?
That is a great question. I would say because part of the project was you had to split people up into their roles, right? So that was quite an interesting thing, figuring out people's strengths and what they were good at and what they wanted to do from a leadership perspective, and then also distributing tasks were huge. So making sure everybody's doing the things that they're tasked to do. I definitely learned that part of it. I learned how to write a business plan at 16, which is huge. And like a lot of 16-year-olds don't know how to do that. I also
And what are
pitched
some of the things in the business plan, just to highlight, because some of
that.
our listeners maybe have never put one together.
Yeah, yeah. So like I had never put one together back then. So it was a very short one. Like now our one at Matt is 50 pages, but it's like a 3-page business plan, just objective, what the audience is, the pain points, the marketing, the finances, and just sectioning all that off and being very thorough about systems and roles and stuff like that.
Right
So,
on.
there wasn't really any systems. It was a random high school clothing thing, but learning all that, but I definitely think the leadership skills built from that translate into what I'm doing now. And we also did a pitch competition too, where we
Beautiful. Yeah.
won we won, I don't even know what play, it was second or third in the logo competition. And so that's where I got over my fear of public speaking is from that as well, right?
Yeah.
Which is huge.
So all the way up to that point, would you still consider yourself an introvert, like through that experience of running the social company?
Heavily. A
Yeah.
lot of my confidence today is built off of social clothing in just the sense of like I felt like I was doing something cool, I was accomplishing something, and my confidence from there kind of skyrocketed. I mean, every business owner has some level of ego, right? So probably part of that confidence was a bit of egotistic stuff, but yeah, that
Start to
definitely
get a
like
little success, and then you're like, all right, here we
yeah.
go. Let's take off with
Yeah,
this.
but that definitely helped build up that confidence where I was able to talk to people, and I still to this day find that if I'm talking about business
Mhm.
or money or motivation, I could talk for hours. And I'm very personable, and I can go into a room, have a conversation with a barista, whatever. If I have to go to a family gathering or have like a conversation about anything other than business, I literally, and this is something I'm working on, I cannot communicate. Like I'm so bad because I'm just not passionate about it.
Mhm.
And I have
Just
no
gets in the way,
confidence.
maybe. Just gets in the way a
Yeah.
little bit. It's just a frustrating nuance you have to deal with.
Yeah. So yeah, that it definitely built my confidence. Everything business I've done.
Right on. What were the biggest mistakes for that company? Like if you look back and you're like, man, we were just really just didn't have this part of the business figured out.
I don't even know. I think like maybe just looking into the future and what the actual goal was.
Just kind of
Because
spin in a circle and just, like okay, let's go over here for a little bit and maybe try and reach out to these people and then just not
yeah,
structure, maybe.
yeah, like realistically, I didn't put a plan in place where if I put a plan in place to be like, okay, in 5 years we should do this and this, like we could have actually made more collections and done things. But the main downside to that company was I started university. That kind of was priority. That took over. Clothing brand just wasn't priority. Um, yeah, like that was the biggest downfall. Manufacturing, I guess, was kind of big. Like we worked on a pre-order basis. So we didn't have a website with stock in place. Like we did a little bit, but we very much so did pre-orders because then we're not putting money up front,
Right
right?
on.
It's a
Yeah.
great sustainable way to do a clothing brand. And then orders took a long time. Because then it's like, okay, we give a 2 week for pre-orders, then it's another freaking 2 weeks for them to actually make it, and then it's the shipping process. So it takes a while for people to get their stuff. That was, I guess, a downside, like a mistake.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it held you from too much overhead. So there's benefit,
Oh
but
yeah.
customers obviously taking longer. How big did you get that company? So when you were working on that for, was it 2 years, 2 full years of time?
Yeah. Yeah. It was like 2 years.
How
Yeah.
like how much revenue did you end up getting to before you pivoted out of it?
wasn't anything insane, maybe like 25,000 total. Like it
Still
wasn't.
first time though. I mean, you're understanding business principles.
Yeah, it's more of a good story of something that taught me a lot that kind of led to like the seven-figure agency we have now. Like
Okay,
it's the lessons learned and the foundation of kind of who I am as a person that transferred over.
perfect transition here, Maddie. So now we come up to October of
Hmm.
2020, and a
Hmm.
couple of unique things I saw. So you are working at a Dollar General or Dollar Tree, a dollar store somewhere up there,
Yeah.
and you have a couple of things, couple of different jobs that are going on. They
Hmm.
ask you to help out with their social media, and now you get put in front of an opportunity at a local DQ to work on their social content.
Yeah.
Tell me the story. I'd love to know about it.
Yeah, so as I was going through that whole social clothing stuff, I had my TikTok account blow up. I was actually in Minnesota at Detroit Lakes on a family vacation and I was just bored. So my brother and I started making videos. I kind of blew up overnight, built a solid fan base here in Winnipeg. And then, yeah, like I worked at a dollar store. My manager was like, "Hey, Maddie, you do TikTok. Do you want to run our account?" And it's like, yeah, that's fun. So started running their social page. Again, I saw some posts on TikTok of this girl who's like, yeah, I do social media management. I make 5 grand a month. I travel the world, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, like I can do that. So made an account in one day. I called it Spark Media. I posted like $80 a month social media management, which for context, now our average is
Nothing.
2,700 a month.
Sure.
So
Right.
it is nothing. And the local DQ, again, back to Niverville, 4,000 people. Everyone knows everyone. So I just followed everyone in Niverville. Very easy to get a sale. They contacted me. I went into the DQ for this meeting. I had no idea what I was doing. And I think that just shows like you don't have to have a plan. You do not need to know what you're doing. Just go make the sale and figure it out later. And so I went, I made the sale, 3 DQ franchises, started running the social. I look back and I'm like, how the hell did I do SMM? Because that was wrong. Whatever systems I was doing was completely wrong. And it just like I just kept posting and I kept getting clients and I quit the dollar store job like 5 months after that, had some posts blow up on my page, started charging $400 a month. Did the worst mistake you can do, hired my friends. Not really friends anymore. And it just kept growing. So like you kind of said at the beginning of the podcast, 20 team members. I think we're now at 30 because it just like we hired 3 editors the other day. It's kept spiraling, but yeah, that's the start. So whenever anybody's like, how should I start my agency or how should I start getting into a creative field? I always think do really cheap work or free work because you need a portfolio and you need results to showcase.
That's a Hermosi principle right there. Start free and then escalate it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. There's multiple points in there I want to open up. So
Yeah.
you sit down and with that meeting at DQ and you said it was terrible. So you sit down and it's just like I would guess, and same thing with me when I
Yeah.
first started the company. It's like you go in there probably like a deer in headlights, like, okay, we're gonna go figure this thing out. Why do you think that they gave you a chance? What about it did they were like, okay, yeah, you're gonna do it, even if it was kind of a failed first meeting?
Yeah, so I think because A, price, you can't go wrong with that. B, the owners were doing their own social and they have no need to do that. They ran 5 locations. And also they're big on supporting the local community of like donating money to the local soccer club and doing stuff like that. So it was, they're big on supporting young business owners. And I think that Nick and Nikki, the DQ owners, they've known me for a while. They always
Right.
saw me at the dollar store. They're just like, let's just give her a chance because she's a grinder. We know her well. She's not going to screw us. She's going to do it. Yeah.
There's a
Um,
huge thing I want to highlight here for those listening is the value of relationships and
mhm.
connections. And so if you're starting something new, those first people, they're they're going to give you a chance because they see something in you, even if it's not the skill, but they see something in you that you have the desired traits, maybe not the actual tactical technical skills, but the
Mhm.
desired trait. So for you, they saw the like you were hustling, you were going to work hard,
Yeah.
and you said they knew you like pretty well. too?
Yeah, well, it's Niverville, so like everyone knows everyone.
Everyone
So it's
knows
not
everyone.
like I was, hanging out with them ever or anything, but they would come into the dollar store and
You
like
are
that was
aware.
my
Yeah.
relationship with them. Yeah.
That's another thing too, is when sometimes I'll go and speak to some of the local schools here, just talk about entrepreneurship, try and just, plant those seeds of like, you got to start just taking action and some of the things to do around it. And the value of relationships and connections and like putting yourself out there, like your brand. And I know that's all you talk, like one of the biggest things that's important to you
Yeah.
given your business, but the branding behind it is like, if you build a positive brand, you're going to get opportunities just because like they didn't know you very well, but they knew, like they saw that in you. And it's like, you never know when a connection relationship is going to come back. It may not be right now. It may be a year, maybe 3 years,
Yeah.
but if you plant the good seeds, put your best effort attitude out there, they're going to remember that. They'll see like, okay, I remember that girl always had a lot of energy. She had positivity. Like I saw her and she's a hustler. That's
Yeah.
awesome. The next thing I want to go into is you had those first three opportunities with DQ, and then now you start to grow the business a little bit more. And I'd love to know, like, what are the steps from like those initial sales to now like you're starting to acquire at more of a frequent basis?
Yeah, so for me, like I built the business the first few years completely organic online content. So back to that TikTok profile of me, like it wasn't famous. It was like 68,000 followers on TikTok. But that was was getting consistent views. I would keep posting and then people would notice, "Oh, hey, this Winnipeg TikTok girl started doing social for other businesses. Let's give her a chance." And so that's kind of how it was, just literally organic posting, consistently telling my story, showcasing who I am, and then doing good work and getting referrals. And we were still very affordable for a very, very long time. So wasn't overly difficult to get referrals. And small businesses they're picky, but they're very nice people to work with and will always refer you. So that was kind of the building blocks in the early days. Keep in mind, I was still in school. I was full course load in architecture, and architecture is very similar to like an engineering
Just
type of
science.
course
Okay.
load,
So
like
heavy course load. Yeah.
very heavy. And so I was in my free time, I just worked on the business. And then it started to get to the point a year later where I would go to what's called studio in architecture, which is where you're like building stuff. And I would just be working on my computer. Somehow still got Dean's honor roll. Don't know how. But it got to that point where I was like making like $5,000 a month, let's say. And when you graduate architecture school from a bachelor's, realistically, that's what you're making at an entry level job for a very long time. So I saw the opportunity, started the business during COVID. All these businesses were switching to online means of marketing and they were investing more money into it. And the stats showcase that that's what they were switching to. So I needed to go all like my brain was kind of there, but the thing that made me really switch, which is what helped make the company explode, is I was in Vancouver
Hmm.
hanging out with a other agency owner and he convinced me to drop out and to go full time. And it was the first time that I really hung out with a business owner and saw the life of the grind and like what the everyday would look like. And I fell in love with it.
Incredible.
And I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. I don't
Right
want to do
on.
architecture. Yeah.
So when you get to that point where you have to make the decision, like I have to imagine it's not as much as that might have been like a cool thing to see. You're out there, you see the energy, you see the passion, like wow, like this is a hustle. Like, these people are not 9 to 5ing it all day long. Like they are
Yeah.
out there hustling. It's still a tough decision. Like what was going through your mind when you had to make that full decision that I am dropping out?
Yeah. So I was walking on the like a beach in Vancouver and I was contemplating like just back and forth. He was trying to convince me so much and I was like, well, my parents put so much money toward my schooling. I was 3 years in, so I had 2 years left. So I was more than halfway done. And I had kind of talked to my mom about it before, and she's like, Maddie, you're almost done. Just stay in it. But I really felt in my heart I have to do it now because now's the opportunity. And especially things with social, it changes so fast, right? So I'm walking on the beach and I kind of just, I have a video of me actually like crying, trying to make this decision.
That's gonna be
Um,
gold. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when you build the empire, that's gonna be
yeah.
gold.
I
Save
every
that
time
forever.
I'm crying about a decision, I always videotape it in case I need it in the
Incredible.
future. And so I was doing that. And I randomly made the decision and I called my mom and I'm like, I have to drop out. And she's like, we'll talk about this when you're home. Um, and that was like, I made my decision. That was that. And I knew it was the right thing. It was, and also it wasn't like I was dropping out of school to build a company that had no proof of concept.
Sure.
I had already built it up to what was a $5,000 a month thing, which would supplement whatever income I would have made if I had graduated. So it was kind of like there was some security in it, right? And I was still living at home with my parents. I didn't really have any expenses. And I think as you grow older and you start to have more responsibilities, it's harder to take those risks because then maybe you have a kid, maybe you have your own place and you have to like buy your own food. Like I didn't have to do any of that. So it was a bit of a no-brainer. I acted out of not wanting regret.
Right
That's
on.
the huge
Yeah.
thing. Like I didn't want to regret not doing it.
That's a time you wait till your 30s, 40s, 50s. You haven't done it yet. And you got all that stuff. It's baggage. And there's more than just a financial side. It's like other people you have to be worrying about. When you're single, you're living on your own, you're like, I can do whatever I want. It's like, that's the
Yeah.
time to like absolutely fall on your face and just like look like a fool because there's no better time. We'll pick back up. We're just in our 20s, part of the process. So
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about too. You drop out of school and I mean, you start building up this company and you bring on more people, and now you're at 30 people today. And as I said at the beginning, we're going to come back to the management side of with maybe friends, maybe no longer friends now, but friends at the beginning, and
Yeah.
now how things have transitioned. So, a few things. Let's dive into because this is a really important
Yeah.
topic for
Sure.
starting entrepreneurs. What did like hire number one look like? Like how like who did you bring in? What was that relationship look like at number one?
Yeah, so if we're going, I feel like I have two kind of number one hires in a way. There's the first hire of the friend situation, which I had three friends involved, and those were my first three
Let's
hires.
let's start there first. Yeah, let's
Okay,
start there first.
so they were close to me. It was like I just needed help. I was in over my head and I needed random captions and editing done. And then it kind of transitioned to where they were doing social media management for clients and they knew nothing about marketing. They had no background in it, no schooling for it. They were my same age and it was small clients too. So it wasn't like we needed to do anything intense. So it was that. It was like a nice way for us to just kind of meet up, hang out, good to just whatever. And then it started growing and getting to the point where, okay, now there's pressure. Now there's clients getting angry. Now I need to be on your ass because you're not getting something done. And now there's a difference between friend Maddie and boss Maddie. And probably a lot of people talk about like being scared having their first hire. For the first three years, almost 3 years of the business, I never had a person on salary. So I think the smartest decision you can do when starting a business is hire people as contractors or percentage based. And I did that up until I had 15 people on the team. Everybody was percentage contractor because then your operating expenses are low. My operating expenses were $800 a month and we were doing like 40K at that point and we still like a month and we had barely any operating expenses because everyone was percentage based. So there was no fear when hiring my friends aside from the friend aspect. And then we switch the script and then we go to Bailey, who was my first like real outside hire. She messaged me on LinkedIn, U of W student. She's still with us. She's our head of operations
Cool.
3 years ago. And that was like, okay, now I'm involving somebody else in the company. I got to teach them. And I noticed different work ethic immediately from somebody who's not a friend. Completely different. They know they can't take advantage of you, that kind of stuff. And again, like still percentage contractor basis, but it was a different feeling of, okay, now there's this person that actually kind of has some respect for me and respect for the company and like can see the goal. So yeah, like those were the two kind of first hires, and I guess the feelings and the difference of it.
And so it progresses with those other friends. And I'm assuming, given that you saw the night and day difference between somebody who
Yeah,
wasn't your friend and was, that they finally kind of get to the point where they're almost pushed out because they're just not meeting the standard. So, I
pretty
mean,
much.
walk us through like what were you feeling in those moments? I mean, how, like, I mean, they were your friends, so it had to have been some difficult conversations you had to have.
Yeah, like there was a time where they had to have it. It was after I dropped out of school and stuff, and there was a time where two of them had to have an intervention with me because they thought all I thought about was business and all I talked about was business, and they felt I had a ton of ego toward it. And you just start to realize that it's okay to grow out of people and to grow out of friendships because you are
Amen.
the equivalent of your equal five people. And I thought like, oh my God, I have become my business. Like I've consumed it too much. Now I realize it's not a bad thing. You just got to find the right people around you. So it kind of faded away from that of like Maddie's too consumed into this. You know, when it's contracted project, it's easier to fade people out because it's like clients just leave and the natural cycle happens and you just stop giving them clients, right? So there was never a hard stop of okay, whatever, like I gotta let you go. That never happened, which was nice because that probably would have been way worse. Yeah, that was
You
kind of
just kind
that.
of they just kind of cycled out at some point and then
Yeah,
tried to bring
pretty
on more
much.
people. So
Yeah.
now you come up to this present day, we are at 30 total hires, 30 total team members on staff. And like what do you
Mhm.
feel like some of the biggest lessons on like leadership that you've changed from day one when you're back doing the company in Manitoba all the way to today? What do you practice now to be a good leader?
To be a good leader, I think that leading with empathy is huge. There's too many bosses that are very harsh and are like negative focused, where when somebody does something bad, you tell them and you scold them and you be like, no, this is the right way to do it. Where there's not enough empathy with people, we're all human beings. And there's not enough positive reinforcement. So positive reinforcement, I listened to a podcast by Layla Hermosi, and she was huge on
Build,
positive
build.
reinforcement. Yeah. And I think it's super important to not only tell people when they're doing something wrong, but tell people when they're doing something right, because then they will consistently do that right thing. And it makes them feel like it makes them feel validated. It makes them feel like you're caring and you're actually watching what they're doing and paying attention to their work. And it builds such a nice relationship of respect between the two people. And we have a good culture at Mad where like a lot is expected of you, and we heavily like respect everybody. We expect a lot. We like we just, but we'll give you we'll tell you when you're doing something good, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So another question I have on just the size of the team, Maddie, would be how you've thought about structuring your organization. So as you've had more people and more roles,
Mhm.
I'm sure you're being stretched as a leader where you're having multiple departments, they all have to handle it. So how have you conceptually thought about, okay, we need to have our customer support team, our marketing, our operations. Like how have you approached building these departments?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was kind of just we needed people to service the work. So it was all social media managers to manage the socials of people. Then we've expanded to larger packages where we started needing videographers and editors and stuff like that. We have a weekly team meeting where we often assess all systems. I usually have something to change. I think that iterating and iterating fast is key for these type of things. And as cheesy as it sounds, hiring fast, but firing faster. And that is very easy. Again, back to the contractor thing. You just get contractors to fill in the work that you need. And then when do you realize, okay, I'm using this editor contractor a lot? Maybe it's time I get an editor in full time for that role. So that's kind of how I approach it because it's really scary to promise somebody a salary and then have that cost and be like, I think I need this role. I'm not 100% sure. So I always go the contractor route and be like, this is how we hire people. We're going to do a contract trial 3 months with you. And if we like you and see value in your work and you fit our team, then we can explore a full-time position. That's how we structure it. And so in terms of like leadership structures and stuff, it's kind of just naturally morphed. There was a time where my days were full of sales calls. And there's this guy, Blaze, that approached me from another agency and he was like, Maddie, I want to do some sales for you. That was scary to hand off. And so he did a couple sales. He was selling packages at double what I was. And so then I was kind of, this makes sense. So then he started doing the sales. Now he's head of social strategy and he does sales. And it's kind of like just looking at the gaps of, okay, what can other people do better than me? Or
Right.
what's taking up all my time where I just don't need to be doing. I'm sure you've heard of the 80-20 rule.
20% of things that give you 80% results, something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So we always do this where it's like, what's the 20% that is getting us results? So for me as a leader, it's doing like meetings with the team, one-on-ones, which are just 15 minutes, doesn't take too much time, putting content on LinkedIn and content online, filming, huge, and going to networking events. Those are the three things I should be doing. And I do like the when we have third sales calls with someone where it's basically closing, I hop on because it bumps up our chances of a close. But those are the things I need to be doing. So everything else I offloaded. Then we look at the full-time social media managers. Okay, Carly is editing way too much for this client. It's taking up too much of her time when really what helps client retention is her communicating with the client, texting them every day, being on top of things in that way and managing stuff. So, okay, we need an editor to take over this and it makes sense in the margins, that kind of stuff. Systems wise, when it comes to the team and the structure, if you see this, I'm a huge sticky note. Oh,
Huge. Is that the org structure?
I don't even know what that means. It's just, this is just me randomly using tape
Okay.
and sticky notes.
Yeah.
But I'm huge on that, huge on like Zapier, if you're familiar,
Yeah, we use
building out
that. Great.
systems, mapping it out. Yeah.
With your team right now, that's obviously you're spending time on the marketing in the sales component. Basically, you're just to make sure I'm following you. You will build out a team. You'll have them kind of contract at first. You spend a few hours, and then the more and more they spend time with you, then they bring them on to maybe a more full-time role as they get
Correct.
into it. Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
And it's great on like cash flow and revenue because
reduces
you're
the
not,
you're right, and it reduces the amount of risk where maybe it's not even
heavily.
necessarily risk, but more setting the false expectations, getting into a full role, which we've made that mistake a couple times where we've brought on somebody full time and like, oh, we just don't have work for you, and then you have to it just complete culture reset when something like that happens.
I've also seen a lot of agencies hire way too fast because they get an influx of clients all at once, and then they have all these salaries they need to pay, and then they go bankrupt.
Right, they
And
lose
I
all the
think I've
time.
seen that so many times. I was just like, there's got to be a better way where you don't have that overhead.
Right, your time goes to the one-on-ones, the networking, the sales. I'd I'd love to know, like, how do you actually structure your day? Like, how do you think about like a really effective CEO day for yourself? Are you planning that before? What time are you waking up? What time are you going to bed? Like, how do you fit this all into a day?
Yeah, so I'm typically waking up at like a 7 a.m. and I'm going to bed at like an 11:30. Sometimes I'm pulling all-nighters, like not all-nighters, but to like a 3 a.m. and I wake up late. It's never consistent. I wake up, I'm pretty much like immediately working. I need my coffee or I'm a bitch. So I get my coffee right away and then I'm working. I don't structure it where my days are set out. I structure it where I have or my like my day in regards
Perfectly
to
planned.
hours.
Okay.
Yeah, I set it up where I have my days per week. So Fridays are my content filming days. That's all I'm doing on Fridays, unless something emergency comes up. Tuesdays, I have no meetings. You're not allowed to book in my calendar. That's my task day. That is where I'm getting done all my tasks I need to do. Mondays, I'm usually full of meetings. Thursdays are all of my team meetings and team things. Wednesday, it kind of fluctuates.
Okay.
Thursdays, often I'm at like shoots if I need to fill in or go see a
Sure.
client. Thursdays, I have a lot of in-person stuff, but that's how I structure it. And so like I'm working from the second I wake up to the second I go to bed. I work in the gym there randomly. Sometimes I try
Mhm.
to as much as I can, but
That the days I'd imagine though helps you get in the flow. So if you're doing like say
yeah.
like what you said Wednesdays is this a team day for you?
Thursdays is like a team day. We have our team meetings and
Okay.
stuff. Wednesday fluctuates a lot. So why I've tried so many different ways of stuff. I'm huge on time blocking on Google, by the way. Why I do like Friday as a content day is because I really zone into things. So then it's kind of when I'm in content mode, I can be in content mode for 8 hours straight and I'm
Right on.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can focus. So
Yeah.
with your experience as we kind of are coming towards the end of our time, I mean, in 2025, and we had this conversation when we set up our pre-interview, I asked a couple of questions, maybe what you thought is ahead for this industry, and you touched on the power of AI and how that'll completely
Yeah.
transform in this 2025 year. So just kind of let us into what you're maybe seeing in your industry right now.
So I don't think people are in the industry of the agency and creative world are realizing how their jobs are all going to be lost. Like it's absolutely insane. And AI can do pretty much anything, especially with seeing how you can film a video of yourself for 5 seconds and create hundreds of talking head videos from that is crazy. And, videographers aren't going to be needed as much soon. Editors, I'm pretty sure CapCut can completely automatically edit videos soon. Like it's not going to be needed. And so, in my eyes, and this is my prediction, agencies are going to turn from these large corporations into 2 to 5 people teams that are more strategy focused because everything can be automated. My also thought process between the whole AI content world is that AI is going to keep growing, growing, growing. People are going to start doing their own content and like businesses with AI because it'll be completely automated. But then there's going to be a request and an overturn from society of this is way too AI automated. I want real people again. And then I think these platforms, and I think TikTok and stuff are already doing it, where it's going to show if it's AI generated and whatever. And maybe they'll even have like an AI feed versus a real feed. And then it'll kind of be the turn of humans taking back the content space again. That's my prediction, at least. And so for Mad, we're preparing for this whole AI gap where I think we're going to get no clients, maybe a few old school ones where it's more strategy stuff. But I'm planning for it where we'll still have the agency side, still take on clients. That'll be our fuel money. Then I want to have the media side where maybe we're having ownership in some podcasts, kind of like a Barstool Sports vibe where like they have all the media stuff under them. And then the holding company side where we're either starting our own brands under us with our capital and marketing those more tangible things that aren't like software AI, like mocktail company, moving
Sure.
company, stuff like that. That's like human labor
Right.
or slash and taking equity in companies and running their marketing.
Sure.
So then that's how we're making our money through other businesses. And that's how I think that we will be able to pivot and have an edge compared to these other agencies that are going to die out because they're just going to market themselves so heavily toward like, don't use AI for marketing, blah, 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 where we're just going to pivot completely
Right.
and be like, this is what we're doing instead.
When did you come to that thought? Is that like in the past 3 months, 6 months? I mean, obviously we've seen AI since notably, I think ChatGPT released at end of 22, I believe. But when
Yeah.
did you start thinking like, okay, this is what's happening this upcoming year?
Past month, our leadership team has been
Okay.
having a conversation. So we're in pretty early stages where we're just kind of researching. We've been watching tons of YouTube videos on this
Huge.
stuff,
Yeah.
trying to figure it out. Because we got to think ahead. Like think about, I love using Blockbuster as an example. They didn't pivot. They were one of the fastest growing companies in the 90s, and then they just completely died.
Thanks. Yeah.
And Netflix approached them in 2000 and said, "Do you guys want to buy us out for 50 million?" And I'm pretty sure it's 50 million. And they said no.
No. Yeah.
And great example, company that didn't pivot. They were growing, they just died. So,
Absolutely. Another thing that's I was curious on with your where you're at in the content space, the TikTok ban in
mm,
America right now, I think is coming into place on Sunday, I believe. I don't that's not in Canada from what I understand.
no.
How is that going to affect what you're doing? And like what do you see ahead from that?
Yeah, so we have a good amount of American clients, but not a ton. So mainly in Canada, we've done Mexico. I'm also talking to people in like Iceland right now, weird enough. I think there's gonna be a huge pivot to YouTube if it gets banned. I don't think it'll actually get banned, by the way. I think there'll be a huge pivot to YouTube because YouTube's a very similar platform with their SEO and stuff. I think Instagram may see a bit of a spike, but I really think YouTube will be the
The big
play
one. Okay.
this year.
Cool.
There is talk though that the TikTok ban it's getting extended 270 days so they can make a deal.
Okay.
Because now Elon Musk and
Elon
Mr.
Musk.
Beast
Yeah.
are looking at it.
So to transition into you, Maddie, and the entrepreneurial mindset. There's a couple things that I just from the videos that I watch that I really want to tap into and see what you've learned. But at least first want to highlight this because I thought it was very unique when I was doing the pre-research and I was scrolling through the videos and there's one video that says it's a tattoo. I believe it's on your left wrist and it's a
Yeah.
40. Is it left wrist?
Left
Left wrist.
wrist, right under my watch it
Left
sits.
wrist and it says 40%.
Yeah.
And I want you to tell the listeners what that means to you.
Yeah, so ever since I was young, again, big sports girl, I had the number 40 on all my jerseys. I don't remember where I heard this saying, but the 40% rule is an old military mindset rule. When when you feel like you have exhausted all efforts, either mentally or physically, you're actually only 40% of your total capacity. And so I've always used that in sports and anything I've ever done. And I've wanted a tattoo on my wrist about it forever as like a reminder of grit and to keep going. And you've never exhausted all efforts. Like like you can always go more and push more. So
There's
yeah, it
always
was
more to
funny.
tap into.
Yeah. We closed a tattoo client. And so I've been putting this off forever because this is my first tattoo and I have like commitment issues with that stuff. But we had a tattoo client and I will do anything for content. And Blaze had this idea of doing a spinning wheel with me blindfolded, pretending that like I didn't know what tattoo I was getting. And so I just was bet so that's why
Is
I
that out there? You posted that?
yeah, it's posted
Okay.
on the client's account. And so that's why I was like, okay, well,
Incredible.
let's do it.
Incredible.
Yeah.
40%. So you touched on really important points there with just as an entrepreneur, you have it's like this grit mindset. Like there's always more you can give. And I think on either side of that, there's times where we can be giving more even when we're successful, when things are
Yeah.
going well, but two, when you're down and out and you're only giving 40% and things are going bad, there's still effort to tap into. So I cover this in every show because I think it's really important to highlight. What are you doing, Maddie, when you're just crushing it? Like things are going very well, you're leaning into that momentum. And then on the other side, what are you doing to get through the valleys that we sometimes go to get back up to a good place?
Yeah, so when there's momentum and things are going well, I think that pushes me more and it motivates me a ton. And those are often the days where I just can't stop working at all and I just grind because I'm having so much fun. So those are at my highs. When I'm at my lows, I always document. So you always videotape your lows because it's fantastic for content. If you look at Midday Squares, the videos of them screaming and crying and stuff, it's fantastic and shows authenticity. So I'm always videotaping. The videotaping is also great to look back on when you're in those sad states because you can look back at what you're talking about and what the issue was and realize, okay, that seemed like such a big problem then, and now it doesn't actually matter. And I moved past it. And so it's a great way to just be like, what I'm feeling right now won't matter in 6 months or in a year or even next week. Right. So kind of like thinking from that mindset. Love the gym. Gym is fantastic to get any sort of anger out. So I always do the gym. I love like relaxing baths, as weird as that is. That just is always great. Put on a show. I like the bath because I can't be on my computer. So
Hmm.
I literally can't physically work or I'm gonna just destroy my computer. So that's great. Looking at the videos, those two things, talking to the team. I'm very open and authentic with the team. Like I went through a breakup about a year ago. It was pretty messy because he was involved in the company a bit. And I was very open to the team about it. I was like, hey guys, I'm just not doing good this week with the whole like personal thing going on. Like whatever. And Layla also preaches that on her podcast. You're human. And I think it's great to showcase to the team that you're human. So I'm always talking to the team when I'm on my lows because it helps showcase to them that I'm human. They hype me up. They showcase that the problem or whatever I'm feeling isn't actually a big deal. And
Wow.
yeah, it usually makes me feel better. So
Yeah. Do you feel like doing that too, you've had more maybe loyalty or buy-in from the team because they see you like you said the empathy at the beginning of the show.
yeah.
You return that back to you and they're like, okay, I want to work for Matt even harder because she's just like me and you can inspire. You're leading at the front, but you experience what they experience too.
Yeah, I definitely see that, and I think it's important, and I think that the team feels very cared for. It's the little acts of kindness that are huge. Carly on the team got one of her clients 3 million views on TikTok. last month. And so I went to the shoot where that client was and I surprised her with this cake that said 3 million. Bailey graduated university and the whole team went to her house to surprise her with like a fake diploma, a hat. We had like crowd music on, and those like little
Right.
moments of just showing humility and human empathy and care are massive. And that may be the favorite part of my job, to be quite honest, is the people and showcasing that you care and just putting yourself out there in that way. Like bosses don't need to be seen as this scary thing. You need respect, but I think a lot of bosses are feared by their like team members. And that's not the way to go about it in
Yeah.
my
So as we look towards the future of your agency, what does it
Mhm.
look like at the very pinnacle, at the very top? You've made it, you fulfilled your
Oh
vision.
God.
Maybe this is 10, 20, 30 years out. What does that team look like? The revenue number? Like, how can we envision this?
Yeah, I've stopped looking at company success and goals in terms of revenue because I feel like I've always like you have a goal in mind and then you hit it and it's like, oh well, I don't actually feel any different. So I've stopped looking at the revenue number. I got a nice apartment, I have a great team. I don't It's just kind of like, okay, great. I could get a new Cartier, like another Cartier watch, but it's like not so goal wise. See, I don't know what the vision is. That's the thing. I have a outlook of, okay, what could the next 5 years look like with AI, but vision wise, I don't know. And I think that's okay. I have no idea where I want to be. I'm only 23. That rhymed. That was hilarious. I don't know. And I think it's also important to point out you don't need a vision. A lot of business owners and entrepreneurs think that they have to have this overarching goal. Like, I don't know, if I was to say my dream would be more public speaking, get my personal brand to a point where I could start any company and have it to be semi-successful, and then have those companies under Mad at like
Huge.
Mad owns equity in it and does the marketing. So I guess that's what I
Very
would
cool.
say. Yeah.
Very cool. That's a perfect answer. So as we conclude every show, we end with the quote that means the most to you. And I'm going to read that quote. It says, F your mood, follow the plan by Layla Hermosi. And Maddie,
Mhm.
I want you to share what this quote means to you and how the next generation can take this quote as a word of encouragement to make a big difference in the world we live in today.
Yeah, mental health is important. Don't get me wrong. You got to take care of yourself. But what is your goal and what is actions that you can take to get to your goal? And if you are stressed about something or overthinking stuff, that's not going to help you get to your goal. You got to take action. Action is huge. So that's why I love, yeah, F your mood. You gotta get things done, get it done, right? And I think it's important to have like that grit and that discipline to just keep moving forward.
Everybody, that's Maddie with Mad Social Agency. Maddie, is there somewhere where the audience can go get in touch with you?
Yeah, I love LinkedIn, Maddie Thompson. My Instagram's Maddie Teresa, or then Mad Social Agency on any platform. We post a lot of fun vlogs you can see.
Perfect. Maddie, incredible. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.